This is not a political
Larry Gardner,
event.
VoiceOfRadio.com, here at the Ohio I Promise Tour with legislators and state representatives. The program is starting now.
And Terrence Upchurch, I saw him coming in. Oh, he's right in front of me. Terrence, I wasn't even looking over that. Terrence represents the 10th House District, which is the Collinwood area and the West Side with me, a part of Senate District 21. So Senate District 21 is House District 10, Terrence Upchurch, House District 11, Stephanie House, House District 12, Janine Boyd. And my name is Sandra Williams. I'm the state senator for the 21st Senate District. At this time, I would like for our House Minority Leader to come up and just say a few words before we get started.
Hello, everyone. Let's try that again. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Great. It seems like you're excited to learn all about the Ohio Promise. Again, my name is Amelia Sykes. I'm the state representative for Ohio's 34th House District, also known as the birthplace of champions. You guys might know a guy named LeBron James, who we can let you borrow for a little bit. Thank you for that round of applause. But remember, he is an Akron boy, so he is our guy, but we were glad to let him hang out in Cleveland for a bit. Nonetheless, I also have the opportunity to serve as the minority leader of the Ohio House of Representatives, and we are very pleased to present to you the Ohio Promise Tour. We have over 25 tour stops where we are going to be explaining and discussing the Ohio Promise and what this means to you and your family. But most importantly, we want to let you know what we are doing for you at the State House. And so we want to have this opportunity to dialogue, for you to ask questions, for you to understand what is in that mysterious, beautiful building in Columbus, and what are all the great things that your representatives are doing for you. Before I get going, I do want to give a huge shout out to the members who are here, Representative Brent, Upchurch, Boyd, House, and Senator Williams. You all are very fortunate to have a delegation in Collier County that works very hard for you. And let me tell you, I know they work hard because they call me all the time, trying to get me to do stuff on behalf of you and their constituents. And so I feel like I know you all just as much as they know you because of how much they are advocating for this community. So you all are very fortunate, and if we could give them a big round of applause for the work that they do. And I think that you will be very pleased that we present to you some of the wins that we got in the budget in the first 6 months of the Legislative Assembly. So thank you again for your participation. Thank you for coming, and I hope that you enjoy the Ohio Promise Town Hall.
Thank you very much, Leader Sykes. All right, so what we have decided to do today is put together a few PowerPoints for you all, PowerPoint slides, and we're going to go through them, but what we hope for you all to do is to give us questions, talk about what's happening in the state, and we can go more in depth on what's happening. So, the first things first, every 2 years, we introduce a state budget in odd number year. That happens every 2 years in odd number years. What happens is the governor gives us a budget, which is what we consider his blueprint, basically what his goals are for the state of Ohio. And our Governor Ryan, this year introduced a budget that was full of surprises for us because it was with a lot of information we had been asking for over the last several years that we did not get under our former governor, Governor Kasich. This year, the governor introduced a $70 billion budget. And the budget has all types of good things in it for the citizens of the state of Ohio. And what we did with that budget, the governor introduced it. The budget goes first to the House of Representatives, and it is heard in the House Finance Committee. Now, it was unusual this year because the House of Representatives actually kept the budget much longer than they normally do. It usually stays in the House from February, March. We usually get it in sometime in mid-April, and we have enough time in the Ohio Senate to talk about what our priorities are. Because in each one of the budget cycles, each branch of government, the governor has his priorities, the House of Representatives has their priorities. Once it gets to them, they change it up in what they see, the way they see Ohio should be going, and then the budget comes to the Ohio Senate. We change it up a lot and determine what we think the state of Ohio should look like. But this year, the House of Representatives, the members in the House, decided they wanted to keep our budget. for a long time, which didn't give us a lot of time to do much of the work we wanted to do. But in the end, we did pass a budget, albeit 17 days late. As you all can see from that final point there, we are supposed to have the budget passed by the state of Ohio by June 30th, and it has to be signed by the governor by July 1st. We did not get a budget agreement until July 17th, which was in violation of our Constitution, which is why we had to go back 17 days later. But we got it done, and there are a lot of good things in it for people in the state of Ohio. Now, we wanted to talk to you a little bit about where the money comes from, the $69 billion that we are going to spend within the next 2 years for the state budget. 25.4% of that comes from your personal income tax. The taxes that you take out of your check every year, every time you get paid, and when you pay taxes at the end of the year. You will pay for the services that we are going to be talking about today. 31.6% comes from the sales tax. That's when you go buy anything in the state of Ohio, whether you live in Ohio or whether you are visiting Ohio, you pay sales tax. And the state legislature actually controls the state tax that you actually pay as well. So that's 31.6%. The federal government gives us about $30,000, 30% in grants, which goes to various things. And then we have other tax receipts, which is 12.9%. And more importantly, where does all that money go? 28.1% goes to K through 12 education. So that money goes to the way we educate children in the state of Ohio. It includes public schools, it includes charter schools, it includes the Peterson autism grants that some people take advantage of. It includes Ed Choice grants that we have been fighting over for the last several years. We should get grants to go to private schools because they want to send their children to what they consider better schools? Or should we make them stay in public schools because they live in the district? The argument is if you take public money, you should stay in public schools and you shouldn't be able to go to public school from private schools. So that's an argument that will go on and on and on, and we'll talk about that. Higher education we will hit on later, but we give about 7.9% to higher education, whether that is a community college or whether that is a four-year institution. We provide dollars for them, students in Ohio to go to school. Most of those are income-based. Government operations is 6.6%. Medicaid is 51.4%. We expanded Medicaid several years ago to include people who do not have children as long as they're under a certain income level. But because of that, our investment in Medicaid has gone up. Now, we also get money from the federal government to pay for that, but of course, you know the lawsuits that are going on in the federal government, that may go away. So this portion of the budget may actually have to go up, or we will have to cut people from the Medicaid rolls. And then finally, corrections, our criminal justice system. That's a big one for us. We spend 6% in corrections. Over the years, we have been reducing the number of people that are in our criminal justice system because of overcrowding. We have several reentry bills that we have passed over the last 4 years that has benefited a lot of people. I don't know if we're going to go into that specifically tonight, but we have done some great things when it comes to corrections. And my final slide is, who pays for all these things? Okay, that was a good last slide. So we cut the taxes in the state of Ohio in this budget cycle by 4%. But over the years, we have been debating whether or not everybody is paying their fair share of taxes. Because we used to have like 6 or 7 different categories for who pays what. The richest people in the state of Ohio always paid the smallish percentage of their income when it came to the taxes, personal income taxes in the state of Ohio. So we have changed that a little bit, but we still have an unequal way of taxing people in the state of Ohio. I will not go specifically through it. Maybe I should. So the poorest 20% pays the most, as you can see here, which is about 12.5%. 12.5% of the budget really comes from the poorest of the poor. The second is about 11%. The middle income, about 10.5%. 4 to 20% is at 10%. If you go down to the richest, That's about 1% of the state of Ohio, and they pay 6% of the income tax that they, for everything we fund in the state budget. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Representative House, and she's gonna go over some specific things about the Ohio Promise.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. How's everybody doing? Okay, so before you came here, how many people actually heard of the Ohio Promise? Raise your hand. Okay. All right. Y'all just saying that now. Okay. No, y'all just saying that. But we specifically wanted to talk about specifically what is the Ohio Promise. We really are talking about just creating opportunities so that people want to be here in Ohio, that we have an economy that works for all. So just going quickly over all of the 5 promises and how those 5 promises actually connect to actual policy implementations for Ohio. The first one is you can live the American dream right here at home. Many times, we have recent college graduates. I remember when I was graduating way back when. It sounds way back when, that's crazy. But anyway, many times, when I graduated from high school, it was my intention to get away from Ohio. I didn't want a place that touched Ohio. I ended up in Florida, and because of life, I ended up coming back here. And Ohio really has been really great to me, right? But a lot of people and a lot of our young people, even, young professionals and even people retiring, they don't feel like Ohio is a place for them. And we are working to ensure to let them know we need their talent here, right? And we're doing things to make sure that their talent can stay here, right? That looks like making college more affordable. We all hear about this student debt, right? One of the things that we have been able to get done in the state budget was ensuring that there was more dollars going into, it's known as OCOG, the Ohio College Opportunity Grant. That's something that we can cheer about, and Democrats in particular were working hard for that to ensure our young people can, again, get a great skills and talent and training, but as well not be debt-ridden, because we know, like I said, it's a huge problem. Another thing, many times people have been talking about the local government fund, right? We know, unfortunately, under the past administration, our local communities have not been getting their fair share of resources back. In this last budget that we passed, we have been able to increase the local government fund. It is not back to where we want it to be, but it is definitely a step in the right direction. Promise number 2, if you work hard, you can get ahead. What does that look like? We want to make sure that people who are entrepreneurs, small businesses, making sure that it's easier to do business here in the state of Ohio, right? We are making sure that we actually cut the tax loopholes. We've had some debates, in this current GA about these tax loopholes that are people, if you have the means that you aren't paying your fair share, we've been able to cut some of those things, right? And making sure that, like I said, people are investing in Ohio. All right. Going into, definitely wraparound services, right? Now, something like, we know the work that Senator Williams has done around the Cleveland plan, but now we actually have money to do that, right? So you have places where there are schools that have those psychologists that are needed. There are schools that may need washers and dryers. We actually now have made a significant investment in those wraparound services. So depending on the community needs, you actually have the dollars to make sure our children, when we talk about that social and emotional learning, they can get some of those additional supports so that they can actually, when they get to school, they can focus on learning and not some of the other things that may be a challenge. Promise number 3, families come first. We've done a lot of different things to really focus on family. Many of us, all of us actually here, are members of the first ever Black Maternal Health Caucus. People should know the infant and maternal mortality crisis that we have here in Ohio. Many people don't realize what it is. And after, many of the debates that were going on in Columbus, there were a group of us who just made a decision that we're going to come together that will ensure that Black mothers and Black families will be healthy, right? And a lot of times it may not be, some people are like, well, why are you focusing on, certain groups of people? But when you see that there is a need and there is struggle and people are actually dying, you have to be very unapologetic to put forth policies that really will address this crisis that we have going on. What else do we have going on? Kinship Care. So my sister, Representative Boyd, has been a long champion, starting back actually from the other Representative Boyd. I mean, and this is what we have gotten, this investment in the Kinship Care Navigator program. You're talking about something that's like 15 years in the making. So again, year after year after year, we've been talking about, we talk about the opioid crisis and things that are happening with our job and family services. But again, we really have to be able to make sure that there is the money and the resources there so that our families, however that kinship may be, that you can have the support to give our young people what they need, because it's hard, right? If you have those natural bonds that are taken away from you, you need a lot of support. And I'm so happy that our caucus was able to make those investments. Ohio's waterway, we've heard about the algae blooms and things that are going on with our waterways. In partnership with the governor, the H2O program, we have had some significant investments to ensure that we are protecting our waterways, not for today, but for generations to come, because water is one of those basic necessities. Without water, we do not have life. Promise number 4, you can live, work, and retire with safety and security. What does that look like? In our budget, we've done some things to make investments with our Department of Public Safety, really trying to ensure that there is a partnership with communities, because certain communities may not have the best relationship, but we wanted to make sure that the investments that we are making, that people can understand that our members that are working in public safety are there in partnership, right? It is not an adversarial relationship. It actually is a partnership, and we're making sure that they have the dollars so that they can do their jobs to keep us safe. We are also doing things to ensure that we reduce the high prescription drugs, right? We have a far way to go. We know what's going on in our healthcare system, and everybody is telling us these prescription drugs are really high. And so we've done some things in the budget to make sure we can start bringing those prices down, and also doing a lot of things really to focus on transparency, to really see what are we actually paying for. Other things we've done, we actually raised the minimum wage for some of our direct service employees, and also made sure that we increase the minimum salary that many of our teachers are making, which, was just a really big thing, because teachers are a vital part and making sure our babies get a great education. And then for healthcare, we worked, some of the things that we were working to make sure that didn't happen. There's been some proposals going on that really would make sure that literally thousands of Ohioans would lose health care, including, low income and our elderly Ohioans. And we fought that policy to make sure that it did not become law, because they were trying to make sure that it was in the state budget. And it's been rearing its head, for these past couple of years. But, working together with our caucus and on both the Ohio House and the Senate, we were successful in making sure that it was not put into this budget. And then promise number 5, we work for you, right? One of the things I really wanted to just take a note of, many people, especially close to home, is what has happened in East Cleveland. People are familiar with the Academic Distress Commission, where the state has been coming to take over schools. In this budget, we have basically in-state takeovers, right? Now, that has been that wasn't a small task, right? But we, in this budget, no other community will have to go through what Youngstown, Lorraine, and East Cleveland are currently going through, and that's a significant win, right? Because again, we've heard the cries from these communities, and now our next step moving forward, we'll be working to see how can we work with those 3 communities in Ohio so that local communities can determine how their public education system will be. We've also made some investments in public transit, right? And making sure, we passed the gas tax, which means more money will be going to local communities for roads, right? Everybody know we have an infrastructure crisis, and we actually need money to pay for it. And the gas tax that we all began to pay July 1st is now going and flowing to our local communities to ensure that just people can get connected. Now, just going specific things that happen in the county budget regarding our Cuyahoga County wins. You all can read, but it was a couple of ones that I really wanted to highlight. First and foremost, I know here in the city of Cleveland, we have the Lead Safe Cleveland Coalition. We were successfully able to get $1 million each year, to make sure we actually have money. Again, this is another thing that, you know, as people have talked about the lead crisis in Flint, we've been had a lead crisis here in Cleveland, and it's really, it's a partnership, right? You know, we have people in Cleveland, we have people from the state, and now we actually have dollars to begin doing the work to make sure that our babies are going, and they're in homes that will not poison them, because they are just everlasting damaging things that are happening. We had some investments in some of our local communities, Cleveland Neighborhood Progress, University Settlement, the Cleveland Site Center, and then there was a Montessori Community School that got some different investment. But now I am going to pass it over to Representative Boyd to just talk about just some more larger investments that for all of Ohio, but it really will impact all of us. So Representative Boyd, take it away.
Everybody. This is a great turnout. It just goes to show Senate District 21, House District 9, and House District 11 are the best districts in the state of Ohio. So actually, quite a few of the big gains that I was going to mention, Rep. House went into great detail about, but I want to give you guys just a brief kind of understanding of some of the fights and how success seems very narrow, and yet this caucus, under our leadership, oversight, was able to prevail and get some of these gains, like local government fund restoration of any kind. Hasn't that been like snuffleupagus for most of us? I mean, we keep saying it, and we finally got some of that, right? And you know, the lead Save Cleveland, I mean, that was a long shot. It came late in the budget process. It was a big partnership, United Way, City of Cleveland, a bunch of folks, and by the time they got to the budget, we were almost halfway done, but we got it in and we kept it in. And you know, when you go to the Senate, it's like the place things go to die. You know, so it's really a huge deal to get some of these things in this majority particular environment that has very specific goals that are different than ours, you know, our mighty fighting Democratic House caucus, and Senate caucus. And I also would like to just kind of talk about how things are so connected, and so what I appreciate most about this particular budget is the connectedness of some of the things we were able to achieve, and how they'll go a longer way rather than if they were individual things. So for instance, you think about kinship care, which we discussed, Rep. House discussed, and I'm fortunate and grateful to continue that work that was my mother's work previously. This keeps children out of foster care, right? It saves the state thousands and thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, short and long term. But it keeps families together. It keeps children in the best possible environment as they develop post-trauma. Because the only reason you are not with your biological parents in these situations when children are removed is because of some sort of trauma. And the more we can prevent children from growing in a situation of trauma, the healthier they are, the more productive they are, the brighter their futures, and the more able they are able to continue creating more positive experiences for the entire community, right? So then when you get an increase, I can't tell you, so I come from nonprofit, right? So behavioral health, mental health, a lot of my friends are social workers. I can't tell you how long we've been fighting to get money into Department of Children and Family Services across the state. These caseloads are insane. So how can we possibly expect, social work case managers with 90 to 100 cases to get children placed healthy and timely and safely, right? So you increase money there, so we're keeping kids out of foster care. On average in the state of Ohio, you've got about 16,000 children in foster care right now because of the addiction crisis that's been going on for generations, not just the one we're talking about now. So you've got that number of children already in foster care. Now we have money, more money in case management system so we can get these kids placed in a safe and healthy and timely, more timely. That's connection, right? That's right. It's huge. It's connection. And then the wraparound services that Rep House talked about in the schools, having support for those wraparound services, behavioral health in schools. So you can train teachers on how to work with children who might have experienced trauma or have witnessed violence, right? So you can purchase certain tools in the classroom that might help with sensory issues because of that trauma, right? So there's all this connectivity in our budget. So I wanted to just share that with you because I think if we don't really highlight those kinds of things, we might miss like the weight of it, right? The weight of it for our futures and for our families. Senator, did you want to? Okay, so Senator's going to talk a little bit more about some of the other wins in the budget, and then I'll come back.
All right, this is our final slide for this evening. I am the ranking member. We're going to talk about the future after that. I'm the ranking member on the Higher Education Committee in the Ohio Senate. And I did that, or wanted to be the ranking member, because of the high cost of higher education, like Representative House and Boyd said. I myself have hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans. As a matter of fact, I got my first bill after a deferment and called yesterday. They said, okay, your monthly bill is $5,000. I didn't bring home $5,000. But that's how serious it is. And so for me, it's very important that no other student, not even just in the state of Ohio, but across the country, ends up in a situation because they want to become educated. My family was a working family. My father worked at UAW. My mother was a single mother, stay-at-home mother. My father died when I was young, which means we didn't have much money. But if I wanted to make or go to college, I had to pay for it myself, and that's the way I had to do it. So for me, this is one of the most important things that we can do as members of the Ohio General Assembly. Now, we have people in the state of Ohio who have come to members of the legislature a lot and said that they are looking for employees, but they cannot find employees for various reasons. Some because people come to work and they're drunk or they're high. They can't pass the test. Some people actually get the job and don't show up to work. But the biggest thing is that people don't have the skill set that they need. So for me, over the last several years, I have been fighting to get money for industry-recognized credentials at our local technical community colleges and technical colleges across the state. A couple of years ago, we were successful in getting $5 million for people to go down to Tri-C or whatever other vocational program that was available for them to go in and get the skill sets that they need in these programs that may take 4 weeks, 3 weeks to get through. We didn't have a lot of people take advantage of those programs. I'm not sure why, because we tried to get the word out. I think they were giving grants at about $1,500 to $2,000 per student. The programs usually cost about $4,500, so there is a gap in where people don't have those funds to take advantage of. But the $5 million is there. There is also a pot of money, probably about $10 million that is available, but it's a loan program. And as I tried to explain to my colleagues, if you don't have a job, why would you take out a loan in the first place that you know you can't pay back when there's no guarantee that you're going to get it? So that $5 million was there. We still had a little bit of it left this year, but we did give another, I think, $7 million to that program for students in the state of Ohio to get industry-recognized credentials in our state at vocational programs or community colleges so they can get the jobs that they need to move their families forward. And with these jobs, for welders, for electricians, many of these jobs start out at like $40,000 a year. So if they can just get that certificate, I believe that will give them a jump start to get the job that they want to take care of their families. So that's great. We did that this year. Now, the biggest cost for higher education is the state share of instruction. And what the state share of instruction is, it is the dollars that the state of Ohio gives directly to colleges and universities throughout the state of Ohio. And the colleges actually use that money to try to lower the cost that they're going to charge to students when they go. Now, we increased the state share of instruction, which is SSI, by the total balance for 2020 is $2.02 billion in 2020, and $2.04 billion in 2021. So Years ago, when Governor Kasich came in office, he said, oh my goodness, we are giving these schools so much money and they're not graduating anybody. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna give you half of the money when you take them into your college and if they pass the test. And then we're gonna give you the other half when they graduate. That is why you might have saw a lot of our four-year institutions stop taking so many students into their colleges. Because if they don't think you can actually graduate, they don't want you on their roads because the state of Ohio is gonna hold their SSI money. That's why they were encouraging people to go to community colleges first to see if you can really make it, which I really think is wrong because I think if you give anybody the resources that they need, they can make it. Whether or not they have to go to remedial courses or not, they can do it if they have those wraparound services. So, SSI, we increased to $2.02 billion and $2.04 billion in 2021. We also capped tuition increases in our 2- and 4-year colleges to 2%. So no college or university in the state of Ohio can increase tuition for the next 2 years by more than 2%. The community colleges was looking for some additional money because they said they had different expenses that they needed and because they really don't get that much money from the state of Ohio. So they received or are able to increase their per credit hour rate by $5 per credit hour. So example, Lorraine Community College, Tri-C, they can increase their per credit hour cost by $5 per credit hour. But they're still, Tri-C is one of the lowest schools in the state of Ohio according to the records that we have. Now, after you have SSI funding, which goes directly to our colleges and university, we have something called OCOG. That's the Ohio College Opportunity Grant. Those are grants that are given on a need basis to students directly. That money goes directly to students based on need. We used to distribute it based on how many people submitted their application. After that deadline, they basically give everybody the same amount of money. Back before the recession in 2008, we used to have over $200 million a year in that program to help reduce costs for Ohio students. When the recession hit, we took it down to about $90 million a year, which means we lost $110 million a year in student-based aid, and students' costs went up. Now this year and last year, we were able to make some successes. This year, we've taken it up to $122 million in 2020 and $148 million in 2021. So while this is not a lot, it is definitely way more than where we have been over the last 8 to 10 years, and we are still asking for increases in those dollars because we know that that's still not enough. That's still a gap where students are going to have to take out student loans in order to afford colleges in our state. Final couple things I want to talk about. Hopefully all of you know that every student starting in grade 6 can go to college for free while they are in school. It was a shocker to me that they can go in 6th grade. I thought it was like the 9th grade, but what's the name of that program? College Credit Plus. So College Credit Plus, if you have a student or a student in school in the state of Ohio, they can go to college, and a lot of high schools, I hope there's no principals in here, don't tell people because the fight in higher education is, well, who's going to pay? Where does the money come from them to go to college? And it comes out of their money that the high schools get to educate them. And I will get deeper into that if anybody has any questions. So starting in the 6th grade, you can go to college. Most people go to community colleges, and a lot of people are coming out with 2-year and 4-year degrees when they come out of high school. Now, that's available to us now, and hopefully that will cut down on college costs. But this year, we also provided $25 million to high school students for industry-recognized credentials. Again, going back to the credentials we talked about in the 2-year and 4-year institutions for these employers in the state of Ohio who are just looking for people who want to they don't want to go to college, they just want to get skill set and go directly into the workforce. We provided $25 million on top of what they get for those industry-recognized credentials. Hopefully that works. And then we provided money for the Choose Ohio First Scholarship Program. This is targeted at low-income students who want to go into STEM, science and technology, engineering, math, and one more. But we provided $40 million in 2021 and $28 million in 2020. So if you know students who want to go into STEM education, there are scholarships in addition to all the other dollars that we talked about that they can take advantage of. And again, this helps, number one, save time. So instead of you taking 4 years to go through college after you get out of high school, you can start going to college and start getting your skill set while you're in high school. So you don't have to hear, I don't feel like going to college, it's been 12 long years. You don't have to worry about that anymore because you can do it if you focus while you're in high school at the same time. Representative House talked about the H2O program. That's a big win for us because of our lake area out there. But that is going to be helpful for a lot of us in the state of Ohio for a lot of good reasons. And with that, I will turn it over to Representative Boyd.
Senator. So those are some of the gains. We know that that's, that no budget has ever been perfect. I think for Rep. House, Leader Sykes, and myself, this was the first budget we actually voted for, though, and this is our third term, because of what we were able to accomplish and get for our communities. But we know that there's many more fights ahead and many more gains to be made, and that will require the fight. So just to give you an idea of how we have been determining our priorities for the next series of fights and committee hearings and sessions, we did a cross-section sort of survey across the state, and some of the things that came out, the priorities as spoken by our citizens, our residents, Ohioans, included, number one, of course, job creation, right? And I think one of the things we all talk about on our side out is job creation it's not just economic development, it's not just tax incentives, right, for businesses. It is workforce development for the harder to employ. That could be veterans returning who might need additional supports, psychiatry, mental health, medication management, single parents who might need childcare and access to affordable childcare, quality childcare. It might be seniors who realize that they can't live on the fixed income and they need a whole new set of skills and have to rejoin the workforce in some capacity. So we recognize that, we recognize it, and you can see some of the things that we've introduced in terms of that include helmets to hard hats, equal pay for equal work. We know that half the population, the working population in our state, represented by women, right? Half the state. So the leaders of the household are women. That means they are bringing home the income that cares for their families. And so why not have equal pay for equal work? We have an equal pay hotline bill so that people can report pay discrimination. That's actually my bill, without any fear of penalty from the employer. And they can do it anonymously. I have a paid family leave bill. I also have paid family and medical leave. We know, again, if women, so this is the thing, right? At the State House, we talk a lot about protecting pregnancies. But you can't protect a pregnancy without protecting the pregnant woman. Can I say that again? You can't protect a pregnancy without protecting the pregnant woman. So if we have pregnant women who are already not receiving equal pay for equal work, and they don't have paid leave, they're hourly, and they need to, decrease their work hours or their physician recommends bed rest, how will they do that without losing their job? So we have paid family and medical leave, for instance. Domestic violence. We've heard enough, right? So many of you might be familiar, and I'm going to stop talking about my bills after this, but many of you might be familiar with Aisha's Law and the work I'm doing there. It's a bipartisan supported bill. It's an overhaul of our policies many of them are antiquated when it comes to protecting victims. And so we're still working on that, and our hope, and some people in this room came and testified at the second hearing, and I'm grateful to you all for that. And you know, we just keep working, moving ahead. There's been pushback, sure, on parts of it. Some people don't like change. But we're just gonna keep working to make sure the bill better protects victims, and that's the whole point. So, you know, other efforts that we have in the making in terms of legislation that we're pushing moving forward include reducing prescription drug costs, because it's a scene when people have to choose between getting their prescription or paying a bill or, you know, buying groceries. It's a scene. Keeping seniors in their homes, you know, under Governor Kasich, he was very interested in keeping seniors in their homes at one point, but then he cut Passport and the Homestead Act, right, that helps people stay in their homes. So we are revisiting that through legislation, and we're really trying to work with the governor, this new administration, to restore those sorts of supports to keep seniors in their homes, if that's their choice. Increasing minimum wage, expanding working family tax credits, automatic voter registration, because if you want people to keep fighting, we gotta protect the vote, right? You want people in there that keep fighting, we gotta protect the vote. So those are some of the things we're working on moving forward. Certainly, common sense gun laws. I don't know if any of you have read it, but there was a threat made to those of us who are willing and committed to supporting and passing responsible gun legislation. The threat was basically there would be dead bodies on the State House lawn. So you see, DC is not that different than Columbus. But that to me says that they know it's the right thing to do, and you know, some people again just don't like change. So we will continue working on those kinds of things, and we are certainly happy to take questions at this point. And I'm so grateful to our staff. I'm sorry. Oh yeah, so staff is gonna pick up cards. If you have index cards that you've written questions on, someone's gonna come around and pick those up, so we can ask as many of them as we can in the time we have this space. I would like to thank our staff. The index cards were on the sign. Here's some right here, perfect. Thank you. I want to thank our staff that drove here from Columbus to work with us tonight and hang out with you guys and with us. We're so grateful to Ethan and Kaylin for making the trip. Our resources there, New Voices, Planned Parenthood, everybody. Oh, so she got there. Okay, thanks y'all.
All right, so we're going to take our short commercial break, as Representative Boyd indicated.